The Kill Registry by Brian Howlett. But you did choose love. Beth's bullet. The cyclist almost struck me as I stepped from the streetcar. It was as if she wanted to hit me. She looked up quickly from her handlebars, and her gesture made it clear that she thought it was up to me to get out of her way, even though she wasn't riding in the newly approved bike lane. Moron. Of course, she didn't stop to apologize. I shall here and now vote for you to be struck from the city for good, or as my friend Tobias says, bang bang, you're dead. Like the guy who took up 2 seats on the crowded car earlier this morning by putting his knapsack squarely down on one seat as if he owned the place. No one challenged him, of course. You never know what someone's carrying in their knapsack. And as they've told us from day one, you never want to waste your bullet on a minor altercation. And always think about it before you shoot, because shooting must only be your last resort. I turned down the side street toward Beth's place and continued to indulge in my morning ritual. This early, lazy part of the day is conducive to daydream. The reality of the day hasn't barged in yet, so we're free to fool ourselves about who we might be and what exactly we might be capable of. Who will be my one and only mark? I may not agree with the law as it's written, but on any given day there are no shortage of reasons to exercise my rights within it. The woman at the medical center yesterday who looked at me with practiced, uncaring eyes and in an oily voice told me that there was a glitch in the booking system and that I would have to come back next week. Next week? After waiting 2 hours? As if I don't have better things to do. Good thing you're already inside a medical facility, ma'am. Or the pizza delivery guy who showed up at my door last night with a stone-cold pie and still expected a tip? I'll tip you all right. I'll take out my state-sanctioned pistol designed to be 99.9% accurate within 4 feet, and I will calmly shoot you. You will protest or you'll run, but you won't get away. Besides, you'll have seen it coming. As we've all learned in our mandatory 3-hour training, you'll know when your time is up. You've crossed the wrong person. The government pistol is too well calibrated, and your name is about to be logged into the registry. But no, as I've said, you don't waste your bullet on a stranger. We are taught from the moment we hit the age of majority about the value of prudence, of stepping back and thinking twice about what we're about to do. I was unlucky enough to be the first person who Beth called after she shot her dear Paul. I never liked him all that much, but now that he was dead, I couldn't deny feeling a small ripple of sorrow as much as I tried to resist it. Why couldn't she have called the ministry directly and left me out of this? Why does a sister or an uncle assume that you owe them something? I didn't want to be here at the best of times. Her apartment building is an affront to me. Would it have killed the developers to have at least planted a few trees to obscure their selection of the cheap beige brick that's discoloring and chipping? Everywhere is the stink of people struggling to keep their heads above water, but pretending all the while that everything's fine. Balconies are cluttered with cheap rusting bicycles, rarely used, soggy couches with duct-taped cushions, and long-forgotten barbecues. There are flags hanging here and there proclaiming a resident's passion for this sports team or that, as if anyone cares who they might be rooting for. And now there's the stink of a dead husband about the place. A half-empty bed, an apartment for one. I was determined not to feel guilty. Beth had pulled the trigger. This was not my fault. She looked herself when she opened the door. Had she put her makeup on before the kill or after? Today is our 5th wedding anniversary, Beth began, reporting the news flatly. Already? Too late for congratulations. I saw Paul's feet sticking out from the kitchen. I can't stay. Only one of his feet had a sock on it. A naked foot, at the best of times, is not our most attractive feature. Paul was 32, my age, but the sole of his foot was wrinkled beyond its time on earth. Not seeing the rest of him, I might guess the corpse to be of a 90-year-old. Angry purple veins strafed the arch that no longer had to support him. Did my own feet look like this? Maybe Beth didn't really kill him. Maybe Paul just had a heart attack. Beth went back inside, and I had no choice but to follow her into the drab yellow kitchen. I couldn't help but ask myself why they hadn't placed a nice plant in their hallway. Maybe a fiddle-leaf fig tree. A bit of vivid green to interrupt the faded beiges, creams, and yellows. My sisters never understood that it doesn't take money to cultivate style. And why hadn't they repainted the place? Paul wasn't a lazy person, and paint is an easy way to fool yourself into thinking you've moved into a new place. My poster, framed, occupied pride of place on the living room wall, above the couch. It was the first campaign I worked on out of school, and it was, to be honest, in looking back at it, a first blush idea. We commissioned an illustration of a traffic light replacing the red and green lights with stick figures representing a pedestrian. In place of the amber light was a figure riding a bicycle. Allie, my art director, came up with the concept within minutes of the briefing. Above the traffic light it read, "Let's go, people!" My headline. The font, 10 years on, had aged well. Right out of the gate, Allie was proving to be the more talented of the two of us. It was the city of Erie-Ton's first referendum, too. A vote to determine if cars should be banned from the downtown core. The referendum was less about air quality and more about the politics of personal space. Pedestrians, cyclists, and patio diners versus cars. These days it seems it's people versus everything. At the time of the briefing, I never asked Allie where she stood on the issue. Management told us there was a healthy budget for creative development, and we thought only of the design possibilities and an opportunity to begin building our portfolio on a project that would enjoy significant exposure. We were the first creative team hired by The Kitchen, a traditional public relations firm intent on expanding its offering to include advertising and design. The final vote turned out to be close, but the no's won out. If you're to visit Erie-Ton today, you'll see that cars still rule the asphalt, and the potholes and angry pedestrians still wave their middle fingers in their wake. Still, Allie and I made an impression on management. When Beth told me she wanted a copy of the poster to frame, I was flummoxed. It was hardly art. Every time I come over, I want to take it down. "Can I get you a coffee?" Paul's mug lay shattered on the floor beside his body. He looked like he'd just tripped and that he might pick himself up at any moment. My sister stepped around him. "No, I'm good." I resisted the temptation to kick at the lifeless feet and confirm that my brother-in-law was dead. "I've called the ministry," she explained. "They'll be here a little after 11. "What about the 1-hour pickup?" "They're busier than normal. You know, I heard a gunshot around the corner just last week." "One shot?" She nodded. "It isn't Christmas," I said more to myself. What's going on? For some reason, I found the sight of the broken mug too much to stomach, and I stooped to pick up the shards. The dark blood and the coffee blended around Paul's elbow in a deep mocha puddle. The mug's handle had skittered several feet away as if trying to flee the scene of the crime. Except it wasn't a crime. Beth headed into the living room. "Can you put on the news for us?" I bristled. "We aren't an us," I wanted to say. "I'm a me." Channel 5 flashed to life, and Bernice Nativad, the anchor with Community Heart, filled in the silence. I was glad to be out of the kitchen, although I suddenly did want a coffee, something warm to hold. "He came into the kitchen this morning like he always does," she started. "He was hopping on one leg. I figured it out," he said. "Why I always have holes in my socks." The poor soul, he was truly pleased with himself. It was the ministry's job to hear the account of the shooting in detail, not mine. "The heel," Paul said, she continued. "It's always the heel that goes first." He put on his left sock. As he balanced, I could see this slow ripple of fat across his belly, the dark hairy patch swelling up like reeds in a muddy river. Beth has always had a touch of the poet in her, but has never pursued her own facility with language. "But that's not what upset me," she continued. "See, he kept going on as I made our coffee. I'm tall, as you know, so I have to bend way over and quickly grab at the top of the sock like this. He stooped way over. I was ready to get out the bandages and iodine, thinking he was about to fall. That puts too much strain on the heel of the sock, and voila. He held the guilty, holy sock in the air, proud or something. That's when I knew what I had to do." Holy shit. My sister, the first Hewitt to kill. Paul is dead. Turn down the volume, would you? She said, turning back to me. Have you told Mom and Dad? Are you kidding? Our Father, who art in heaven? She did the sign of the cross. Don't do that. And someone's going to have to tell them. Mom and Dad aren't married to him. Truthfully, I had imagined making that walk into the bedroom closet so many times this past year. It was so much noise in my head, getting stronger. She keeps her pistol on the top shelf, hidden away, as do most of us. Have you opened yours lately, by the way? No. Why? It's quite something, she continued. The pistol is wrapped in the softest cloth. And your slogan is still on it. Blessed with one bullet. You're such a clever little brother. I got up to leave. As I said, today is our anniversary. Paul had made us reservations at the same restaurant where we celebrate every occasion. And yet, somehow, when he announced the plan, he made it seem like it should come as a pleasant surprise to me. Mr. Spontaneous, Mr. Romance. The ministry should be here soon, I said. Paul was standing where I left him, drinking from his favorite chipped mug through his chipped front teeth. It was the first time I held the pistol since training day. It's lighter than I remember, but it all comes back to you, how you hold it, how to keep calm. It's easier than you think. We don't have to worry about the weapon jamming. The government has spent millions on research and development, and the pistol is pretty much guaranteed to be kickback-proof, or, as people like to joke, it's a bulletproof design. I held the gun up, aiming right at him, and he said, "You're not." But his voice was weaker, she continued. "But look, I am," I said. "What about our anniversary dinner?" he said. Beth laughed. Her trademark high-pitched single, "Ha!" rang out. Do you believe it? As if ordering the same meal from the same menu was reason for me to change my mind. A glass of white before, a glass of red with. Of course, I shouldn't have expected anything profound for his last words. The man has difficulty describing a winter's day. He has 4 words for the 4 seasons. Winter is cold, spring is wet, summer is warm, not hot, warm, and fall is pretty. Pretty. She looked at me, wanting me to share her disappointment in the choice of partner, to confirm that he deserved this fate. Something as dramatic as his own imminent death could only inspire more banality. He has no imagination. Besides, the time for last words was long gone. She grew quiet, as if she was going through the whole process again in her mind. He just slumped to the ground. No drama. Perhaps he saw it coming all along. Perhaps he was okay with it. My sister had executed an all-too-common kill, spouse on spouse. Paul wasn't cheating on her. He doesn't drink or smoke weed, golf or gamble, or even watch sports. He gave the rest of the family nothing to talk about. And maybe that was his greatest sin, at least in Beth's mind. I suspected that Paul may still be standing if he'd suffered from a few interesting vices. And as Beth continued to explain, she had no choice. Tuesday is normally my worst day of the week, as you know, she said. I didn't. The pauses between her sentences grew shorter. I muted the volume on the weather report. It was the least I could do, out of respect to Paul. When I came back into the kitchen before he saw the gun, he was sipping in his morning coffee as if the poor soul was afraid of the hot liquid itself. Jesus, he's afraid of the garbage truck, the neighbors down the hall who are too loud some nights, the traffic on the way to work, the boss who is waiting for him. The boss would be waiting for a while. Beth sipped at her Yeti container of tea, tiny but confident sips. Poor Paul, she finally whispered. I was relieved. Surely a part of her was going to miss a part of him. Even the squirrels in the trees, she continued, shaking her head. The man was frightened of everything, me most of all. This was news to me, but perhaps she was already engaging in revisionist history. Maybe what happened was that Beth suddenly saw what so many of us had already seen, that she was married to a boring man who didn't deserve her. Beth had enjoyed her share of suitors. When she was in her early 20s and still moving her game piece around the board, why did she land on his square and stay put? He wasn't exactly free parking or boardwalk. The only interesting things about Paul are that his brother is a drug dealer and that Paul is the only one to have emerged from the neighborhood without a nickname. He was set to remain comfortably attached to Beth's hip until they withered into old age, dying together in front of the local news at 6. Paul didn't possess the imagination it might take to divorce Beth, and she didn't want to deal with a financial fallout if she initiated it, seeing as how she earned twice what he did. I might have raised a red flag if Beth had thought to ask my opinion of the man when she announced their engagement, but I was forced to play the part of the dutiful best friend and brother and watch her amble down the aisle to what I knew to be a certain disappointment. We all danced that night at the parish hall, uncles and aunts, cousins and adolescents, sneaking drinks, priests drinking out in the open, and of course those in the wedding party who on that day were aglow with their proximity to the holy couple. The groomsmen and bridesmaids were all single, and so we were blessed with the taint of something sexual rather than marital. It would be a good night for us. Everyone gets laid at a wedding. On Beth's second dance as a married woman, she came close to me on the dance floor, and every spin, every turn was an opportunity for me to whisper into my best friend's ear, "It's not too late." But I was honest with myself. I knew from a young age I wasn't courageous. A river flows past you, and who are you to stop it? Beth twirled away from me, her face reflecting the vivid, buzzing fluorescent lights from above and the wine inside her. A beautiful woman aglow in a golden moment. Besides, I knew that this marriage to an overmatched mate didn't have to be a tragedy. She possessed the kill shot. "It kind of took me by surprise," Beth continued. "Pulling the trigger was like a window slamming shut on its own. You know, like on one of those hot days when you're sitting here and you hear it bang down in the other room." It was a clean kill. The event wouldn't raise eyebrows. Registered kills never do. Husbands kill wives, sisters kill brothers, workers kill bosses. The Ministry of Public Safety arrives with the paperwork and body bag, and all the boxes are checked. A person becomes a data point, and the ministry loves its data. But in all the money spent on research and training, there is little advice offered on how to respond when your loved one has pulled the trigger. The window's down. Nothing's getting in. Beth is blessed. I don't have that one person in my life who stands between me and lasting happiness, like some traffic cop on a death watch with an arm raised high. I'm not married. I like my job. I have lifelong friends. However, I have easily eclipsed my 20s, and I am all too aware of the danger of turning into one of our aunts and uncles on our mother's side, who gather around over their overpoured glasses of red wine and beer, pining over the fact that they never had the opportunity that my generation was given, and that now it's too late for them. If I could have taken out Professor Cayena, then I would have graduated with a better mark and found a decent May Street law firm to intern with, and not the bloody government. Uncle Archie. I would have killed Coach Clemens in high school. I could have been properly showcased for scholarships to the Tier 1 schools. Aunt Jerry. She didn't have a clue how to help her athletes. She was a geography teacher, unless when it came to running track. These are the toothless observations of things that have long passed. If is a word for the weak, and they're weak because they're broken-hearted. I had to ask, how does it feel? People are right, Beth replied. It was the best decision I could have made. She stared at the anchorwoman's familiar face as she calmly reported on flooding in the southwest part of the state, before moving seamlessly to announce the birth of a baby panda at the city zoo. There's no point in waiting for old age, and then what? Take my bullet into the grave with me? She said this last part accusingly. There was a knock at the door. Do you happen to have any money on you? I guess. Sure. They charge $38 for the kill. Christ, I can't believe how easily she says it. Kill, shoot, murder. None of them are acceptable. She saw how I looked at her. After you enter the name in the registry, the fee comes up automatically. Like I said, I didn't plan this. Was her voice getting a bit thinner? Was regret creeping in? It's the same price as a cat license. So much for regret. They knocked again. You don't have a cat. But I have a dead husband. She no longer looked quite herself. Maybe I should stay. I'm good. No, you don't have to. She jumped up to open the door to the kill cleanup, as the ministry employees have come to be known. There was none of the yellow or red uniforms we associate with ambulance attendants or firemen. They come wrapped in drab olive trousers, as if they're attempting to disappear from the task at hand. Their matching olive jackets have a small blue patch on the shoulder, but beyond this, they look like they're here to fix your cable television. What's more, these two were younger than I expected, and much more pleasant. The one attendant shook Beth's hand, and it almost seemed as if in congratulation. But I must have imagined that. "Can we have your gun, please?" the other attendant said. "It's there on the counter." We all looked over at Paul's body. "And we'll need his as well." Sugar high. Governor Kate is not photogenic, which is strange because in person she's quite beautiful. But try as they might, even the best photographer has a difficult time hunting down any humanity in her face with their lenses or successfully softening her features with their lighting. But this cool persona is right for our times. Warm and fuzzy is out. Maybe it was never in. In fact, according to the research my company is privy to, she's the most popular politician in the country among 18 to 34-year-old urbans, which is the only demographic that clients want to talk about. A poorly typeset headline emerged from the governor's right brow. "Exercise your right to vote." This billboard is permanent and runs statewide. To the right, our city had bought space for a tactical message promoting the upcoming local referendum on sugar. This billboard was a hack job, a photograph of an hourglass filled with sugar, not sand, counting down to the date of the referendum, I suppose. The headline in the billboard was woefully straight. "The Sugar Referendum, November 21st. Referenda are always held in November. People have nothing else to do at this time of year. Might as well go out and vote on whatever issue the government wants to put in front of us. Was there even a writer on this project? The headline could be so much more captivating. How about "Sugar High or Sugar Low?" Or "One Sweet Opportunity"? The brief was too easy. Even in my current state, trying to process what the hell had just happened at Beth's, I could come up with something better. I often argue with Allie about how explicit a message needs to be and the role of the copy versus visual. The two need to work together, I always say, and strike a balance. She nods her head, but I'm not sure she really sees the value of what I bring to the table. Yet, I persist. People say that no one reads these days, but I know the truth. The right slogan can get a political party elected or change the way a city governs. A referendum campaign works best when you present the consumer with a choice: hope or despair, happiness or gloom, moral wealth or depravity. The creative should leave the viewer to fill in the gap on their own and connect the dots. The question is, how big should the gap be? Down the road from the governor's billboard was a poster I hadn't seen. "People have the majority, but God has the authority." Nice. There was no logo on the billboard, an anonymous missive from on high. Although, how anonymous can it be with the Creator as a reference? Would the poster have worked better if they'd replaced God with Jesus? Jesus is somehow more personal. Intimate, a guy who has walked on earth among us, as well as on water. Whereas God conjures an image of the corporation of heaven rather than an individual. Either way, this poster's spokesperson was a lot more powerful than Governor Kate could hope to be. "You prick!" I turned to see an e-bike crashing into a cyclist from behind. These electric skateboards and bikes and scooters are a menace. I stopped, as excited as the rest of the bystanders, to see what might unfold. The cyclist's rear tire was folded in from the impact. "Are you not paying attention? Do you know how fast you were going? 25 miles an hour. You can't hear my tires on the road? I can't hear any part of you. That's the problem. Maybe you should try a bell or sing or something." The cyclist opened her knapsack, and at that, the e-bike rider grew quiet and stepped back. The small crowd drew in. But I knew by the telltale streak of magenta hair tumbling out from the cyclist's bike helmet that she didn't have anything in there. Sure enough, she pulled out a laptop computer and quickly inspected it for damage before dragging her bike onto the sidewalk. The crowd retreated, and the e-biker rode off, unrepentant. I can't help but wonder if our streets are any safer these days. I guess it depends on which press release you read. I continued to my apartment, which is just a few minutes away from the office. I had just enough time before my lunch date. We all keep our pistols in a safe place. Beth's was in her bedroom closet. Mine is in a safe deposit box locked inside a larger fireproof box that I leave in a chest in my tiny storage locker in the basement. The combination for the fireproof box is the date I left home for good. The combination for the safe deposit box is the date I started at the kitchen and met Allie. I had thrown some old referendum campaign baseball caps in the chest as well. Bark yes, bark no. That was a vote on outlawing dogs in the city of Clarion Lake. Allie and I knew it was a loser the moment we received the briefing. Jamais anglais! The francophone city of Westland held a vote on outlawing the use of English. I didn't even have to write that slogan. I just went to the French-English dictionary. Maybe my slogans aren't as powerful as I like to think. Maybe I'm a bit more of a hack than I like to admit. But that doesn't stop me from continuing to try. Every brief is a new opportunity to create something that will stick. I've believed that since the day I left school. Blessed with one bullet. This one was embroidered in fine silk. I had written it almost as a joke, but Allie loved it the moment she heard it. So did the ministry. 15 years ago, when the government launched the Registry, the state was awash in manufacturing, oil, tech, and gambling revenues. 5 years later, they hired the kitchen to rebrand the program. We were told at the briefing to spare no expense and to make people feel a renewed sense of pride in having voted yes to such a progressive concept. The box itself is a heavy cardboard construction that feels more like wood than paper. It's jet black, the deepest black you can imagine, so black it's beautiful. The gun itself, gleaming silver, is encased in a form-fitting red plush tray. Red and black, blood and night. Allie's bullet. Gentrification isn't pretty. It pushes away the grime and sense of living on the fringe that inspires a struggling artist. It cleans the streets and then bows down at the feet of the coffee roasteries, microbreweries, and loft-style complexes that all struggle so mightily to look back as they all look forward. My office building is the Peacock of Stewart Street. Stewart runs parallel to the railway tracks that once fed the munitions, candy, and auto factories that helped fuel this northern city's growth a century ago. Some of the red brick factories and warehouses remain empty, impatiently awaiting their own transformation, as the neighborhood sheds its industrial past. Thankfully, they may have a long wait because the pace of change has slowed. Simply taking a breather, or will all the blueprints, cranes, and developers be gone for good? Our economy has fewer pillars today, and those that remain are developing cracks. Oil is drying up. Tech boomed, then busted. The government grants that once helped spur developers ever forward are now few and far between. The idle cranes that dot the skyline may never raise another load of iron beams ambitiously skyward. 158 Stewart, however, has only 3 empty floors out of its 10. The rest are occupied with gaming companies, photography studios, a few struggling app developers, and my employer. The kitchen moved into the building just a year ago, partly to take advantage of a discounted lease rate, but also to bring creative credibility to a firm that has fattened itself on government contracts. My boss, Arlene, is vocal about the desire to work on more creative award-winning files and elevate the kitchen's profile, but it seems the only people to be sipping that Kool-Aid are me and Allie. I normally avoid the ground floor restaurant in our building and the prices that are increasingly out of sync with the average salary these days, but Allie had invited me to lunch. I arrived to see that she had ordered us both a beer. Strange, as she knew that I don't drink during the day. "I hope you don't mind," she said, speaking a little too quickly, as I also tend to do in her presence. I tried not to look at her legs under the table as I took my seat, or her wrists or her neck. I loved and hated that she wore skirts to work. When we met, I wanted to ask her out, and I suspected that she'd accept, but I wasn't ready for someone like her. I knew myself well enough to know I wasn't yet fully formed as a man. The clay hadn't hardened. She would absolutely steamroll me. So, after those initial weeks working together, I learned to put my feelings away, as if in another box in my storage locker that I may never open. But whenever we're alone and sitting close like this, which is often, the lid opens slightly. The 10 years of our working together pale in the face of those first weeks I spent with her. She raised her glass. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "Don't worry, I'm not engaged." She's careless with my feelings for her. Why would I be worried? She's lived with Jerome for several years, and maybe if she does get engaged, it wouldn't be so awful. It would keep her in the box for good. But it is a big day for the two of us. A victory. Energy oozed from her pores. I suspected that she would have punched the air like a hockey player who had just scored a goal if she wasn't so clearly enjoying caressing the sides of the cold beer glass. Apart from a few creative interns that Allie had recruited, the rest of the kitchen remain traditional PR practitioners. There's never quite enough work to justify hiring another copywriter and art director, so we've learned to defend our role within the corporate culture by amplifying it, 2 against the world. "What victory?" I said, "and how did you find out?" Before me, I didn't need to add. The shine came off her smile, and she attempted to hide behind the rim of the glass. "Don't do that thing," she said. "What thing?" "That looking off into space thing that you do. Your 'I'm tuning you and the whole world out' expression. That glazed look. It isn't attractive." "Can you believe this place?" I held my glass up to the window. "Handcrafted beer in a handcrafted glass. Bullshit. Mine has a crack. At these prices?" "Anyway, Arlene is calling an all-staff meeting at the end of the day." "Oh, that's another surprise, at least for me." She reddened. "It's not like I'll ever be your boss," she said. "Oh, a promotion. How did I miss that? There'd been no signs of this." "Don't do that either," she continued. "Say, 'oh,' like that. Except that it sounds like you'll be my boss. We'll always be equal partners. Pictures," she pointed at herself, "meet words." She tilted her glass in my direction. I'd walked past enough hushed meetings in the boardroom involving the senior leadership group to know that multiple discussions concern me but don't involve me. And now, Allie will be at that table. Worse, she belongs there. She had graduated from the finest design school. I had scraped up enough money to afford the community college program taught by hack copywriters who had never worked in the advertising business. Her school is an enduring beacon, casting a glow across her resume. Mine is a pimple that refuses to pop. She'll be great in the new role, but I'm not stupid enough to trust what a good friend says. We're born as one, live as one, and die as one. Good friends are only fractionally more trustworthy than strangers when it comes to advancing one's interests. And this promotion will only reinforce what Allie has long suspected about the superiority of visuals over words. Maybe I should have been more vocal in meetings, but I, like the rest of the room, always enjoy listening to Allie take everyone through the pitch. She sets up the strategy better than anyone else can. She spoon-feeds the insights, taking nothing for granted. The secret, she says, is to put yourself in the client's chair and keep it as simple as you can. Try as I might, I can't quite fit my ass into that seat. She takes her time walking the client through her rationale for the style of art direction she's chosen. When it comes time for me to read the copy, I just blurt out the few words, expecting everyone to be as impressed with my writing as I am. "And if you think that lunch is on me, you're mistaken," she said, smiling, trying to get us back on solid ground. She held up her purse. "Look, no expense account." I held up my knapsack in response. I removed the handsome black box and placed it on the table, bringing it out in public for the first time. "I don't think I've seen the new ones," Allie said. The state redesigns the gun every 2 years. Occasionally, a story surfaces about the cost of the program, but it gains little traction. The ongoing objective is to make the strike ever more accurate in the hands of even the poorest marksman, like the latest golf club designed to forgive a hack golfer's swing. In the early days, there were far too many messy cleanups required, and those did capture national attention. A shooter would hit their victim's shoulder, and the bloodied target would stumble out of a crowded subway car, leaving a trail of blood on the way to the overcrowded hospital. "May I?" Allie opened the lid. Good to see they're still using your slogan. Nice. She picked up the gleaming weapon, and a red light on top of the barrel immediately began blinking. The silver body threw back glints of the sunlight that was coming in through the window as she turned it over in her hand. That's the sensor. It's new. I heard about that. Impressive. No one else can touch it. I took back the pistol, and the sensor went dark. It was the first time I had touched Allie's fingers in years. It's much lighter than the old one, too, she said, drawing back into her seat. You remember yours? Sure, I guess. This one's also slimmer, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes even the government gets it right. I thought you were so opposed to the whole thing. Haven't you done like 1,000 Hail Marys asking for forgiveness? That would be the act of contrition, and no, I haven't. Who goes to church? You have to put that away, sir. Our waitress appeared. It's a restaurant. I have the right, I argued. It's my restaurant. Screw the governor. I don't want that thing in my establishment. I spend years learning how to create this menu, and I'm about to let people splay their guts all over the place? I placed it back in the box. Would you kill me if I told you I was marrying Jerome? Allie said, once the waitress left. We never talk about Jerome. No. That's too bad, she replied. And I don't think he would kill me if I was to marry you. Poor me. When I met Allie, I immediately looked her up on the kill registry, as one does. The brief write-up online stated that Allie was 21 at the time of the shooting and still at university. Far too young. Use your bullet so early in life and it closes too many doors. How can you possibly know at such a young age that the person you've chosen to silence is the one? But of course, it didn't seem to have slowed her down any, and in fact, maybe because she's used her kill at such a young age, she seemed more measured in her actions than others. You'd never guess that at one point in her life, she had given in to the moment. But you, I continued, you did choose love. The waitress came over again to take our order. Seeing her made my blood rise a tick higher. Again, I fantasized about eliminating the minor annoyances in my day. We can't take too long to order, Park. We need to get back. I'm guessing that this is my new boss talking. Unlike my deceased brother-in-law, Allie's boyfriend in at school did entertain vice. Allie shot Daniel in the back, which was bare at the time, seeing as how he was on top of her roommate. Neither party in the betrayal saw her enter the bedroom, giving Allie time to consider the move. She knew it was the right thing to do. She went back to her bedroom where the box was in the bottom drawer of her chest. She took the time to type her registration number and her boyfriend's name into the government application on her phone before going back into her roommate's bedroom and firing. In a show of patience that the government later merchandised as a best-in-class example. Everyone is a virgin until they take their first shot. No one knows how they might handle it. Was it a moment that she would like to take back now, all these years later? Or did she wish she would have been blessed with a second bullet so she could kill her roommate, too? I don't think I want lunch, I said, pushing the menu away. I got up. But go ahead, finish your beer. I'll see you back there. Don't be ridiculous. I'll head back with you. We can grab takeout. I went straight to the exit, eager to get to the privacy of my office and the balm of routine. Allie followed me outside into the parking lot. Don't worry, your job isn't going to change. You'll still be my amazingly talented writer. Was I now obligated to listen to her? Could I no longer just tell her to go to hell? Where will you be sitting now? Don't be stupid. The same office as always. It's not that big a deal. I wished she would stop lying and say, this is an amazing promotion. I'm getting a bunch more money and a bigger voice. I wanted her to jump up and down and shout, I can't wait. I get it, I started. A job is everything, especially for the lucky ones like you and me. She wasn't following me, but this is something I often think about. We have the best jobs in the world. I guess, sure. Like I said, you chose love when you were a kid, but if that asshole boyfriend of yours never cheated, and you were still sitting on your one bullet today, you probably would never have to use it. You've got it all. I mean it, Park. This promotion is going to be good for both of us. We'll finally have a say with senior leadership. Give me time and I'll ask for more money for another creative team to work under us. Like I'm working under you, I thought. We used to be the two creatives stranded on an island together, but now a boat has appeared and taken Allie away. A nice boat. A yacht. If I had asked her out in those first weeks after we met, what then? Would she have moved in with me rather than Jerome? Which one of us would have moved on from the kitchen to comply with the company policy? If it had been me, would I still be employed? There are fewer jobs in communications than ever. There are fewer jobs in any industry. I never imagined it would be like this. I reached back into my knapsack and redrew the gun. It felt so good, heavy and light at the same time. Right, Allie said with a borderline giggle. Go shoot out the lights, cowboy. While I'm waiting, I'm going to go back and order us a couple of sandwiches. She turned back to the restaurant. I raised the gun, training it between her delicate shoulder blades. The same shoulder blades I would watch flex and quiver as she worked on comps over the layout table. It had been years since I shot my training gun at the seminar, and I may miss, which would be a tragic waste of my one bullet. I moved closer, and the knowing smile left her face. I'd never seen her look like this. Confused. More beautiful. I hoped that she could see some degree of kindness in my eyes, but more so, that she would understand that I was picking work over love. I remember how it felt when I shot Daniel. I can still see his sweaty back. That's one of the things I regret, that I didn't get to see his face when he realized his time was up. A police car passed and the officer looked our way. I kept the gun raised. The officer drove past untroubled. The ministry would clean this one up if the gun was fired. You're not going to do this. An old woman on the sidewalk stopped to watch. Mind your own business, Allie screamed at her. It's just another kill that doesn't concern you. You're still alive after all these years, so you can count your blessings and keep on walking. You made it. The woman stayed right where she was, fascinated by the pistol, and Allie lost interest in her before she did in Allie. Allie looked me in the eye. No, little mama, nothing to see here. This one doesn't believe in the morality of the registry in the first place. You're right, I said, but I kept the pistol at neck height, aorta in sight, as per the instructional video. You know, I never did love him, Allie said. Who can seriously be in love at 21? I kept my finger on the trigger and remembered from my training that it would be a smooth action with little resistance. Butter. The trigger is butter, is what the instructor said. Pulling the trigger on a government-issue pistol is a pleasure. It's mankind's design prowess in full bloom at your fingertips. Don't be afraid, the instructor continued. It's normal to be nervous, but according to statistics, you'll never have to do it for real. Maybe they gave you the promotion because you're in the registry and I'm not, I said to Allie. Management can trust that you'll never bring a gun to work and settle some score with one of them. It was a nice try, but we both knew it wasn't true. Can I tell you how it made me feel? Allie said. She moved closer to the gun's barrel. Have you ever asked someone else who's done it? I thought of Beth and how calm she'd seemed. Maybe they aren't so happy about it, because I'm not. She had often sketched out the day that she shot Daniel, but it was only an outline. She never went into the details, and I never asked. It was one more thing left unsaid between us. I like to think that these silences add up to a mystery, and that they're a good thing, that she falls asleep at night and wonders about the things I didn't say, too. In the registry's second year, the government set up a hotline for shooters to talk through their feelings after a kill with a counselor, but everyone knew that the hotline was understaffed and involved hour-long waits. The state gambled that people would rather lean on their friends and family. So, she continued, staring into the barrel, we all have a gun. We all have a bullet. Aren't we smart? Allie deserved the promotion. She was fearless. I toyed with the idea of squeezing the trigger and seeing her fall to the pavement in a messy, surprised ball, just as Paul had fallen to the dirty linoleum floor. I imagined going back to the office and taking Allie's place at the boardroom table. But you better think about it, Park. Because you see, I thought about it like they want us to. I just didn't think about it long enough. The Kill Registry. Our initial briefing documents from the Ministry of Public Safety 10 years ago included a deep dive into whatever intimate background on Mia Shore was available. As with every pitch, most of the kitchen's team only reads the first few pages of the brief before drawing conclusions and formulating their own take on a problem. But I read on. I learned that liver cancer was the gun that killed Mia's father. Mia was 17 at the time and rendered an orphan. Everyone expected her to be devastated, but she went on to confess in her college application essay later that year that it all felt strangely normal. Seeing her father laying in the open casket at the funeral home, while everyone else carried on as if it were a party once the initial tears were shed, made her feel that maybe death wasn't such a big deal after all. In her account of how she came up with such a radical idea, she credited her father. They watched the news together every night, her doing her homework and only half listening to the updates on the latest breaking crisis that never failed to captivate her dad. Gun violence was the one story he could never get past. "Take away all the guns," he would say. "The government can just take all the guns away. The handguns, rifles, semi-automatics, automatics, they have the resources, and it's time to find the will. Go into every home, every vehicle." Mia had little patience for his sermons. "How are they going to do that, Dad?" "It's the government. If it's something the people want, then they can make it happen. They make us pay our taxes, don't they? Who wants to do that?" Mr. Shore was a successful enough plumber that they could live where other plumbers didn't. Still, he'd never found the time to finish college. There were too many big houses being built in their city at the time, complete with big, expensive plumbing problems, and he learned early on that costing out a job involved more addition than it did subtraction. Mia suspected that money didn't compensate for his lack of a degree. He read too much, thought too much, talked too much. "They can execute a major sweep just like that." He snapped his thick, dirty fingers, making more of a dull thud than a crisp snapping sound. "If you're found holding on to something, then you go to jail. 1 year for every gun you've tried to squirrel away." "Just like that? People aren't going to want anything in return?" He shared his generation's faith in the ability of thousands of undermotivated, uninspired bureaucrats to come together and move mountains. But of anyone else she knew, he also had the most time for her ideas on things. The bigger idea, the better. "Okay, how about this?" he said after mulling on it. "The government takes your gun and gives you back a new one, but this one's different. It can only be fired the one time. Like the good things in life, they happen just once. Like your mom." He snapped his fingers again. As usual, at the mention of his wife, he fell silent. The words survived the father. "Take away all the guns." The idea became a stubborn, unwelcome intruder, Mia would explain in later interviews. It went with her on her early morning jogs. When she was accepted into an elite city college, it guided her fingers along the keyboards as she made her course selection. The government can do it if they want. Her good friends were applying for business, technology, and economics programs. Her father would have been far too intimidated to challenge her own choices, and so Mia found herself in a first-year psychology class with 500 other freshmen and a professor far away on the auditorium stage, wearing a microphone like he was some kind of rock star. He was talking about how attractive people fare better in job interviews, but Mia was thinking about a world where random violence could finally be addressed. Through her undergraduate years, she crossed programs and pushed herself to take a double minor to gain more insights into behavior, predictive modeling, and actuarial sciences. The more she thought about it, the more she had to think about it. How would you prevent someone from just stealing someone else's gun? If someone committed murder by means other than a gun, did that criminal charge need to be modified? What about exemptions to the law? You can't have an enraged fan sitting at courtside leveling her gun at the home team's star player if they miss a free throw. Society would hardly function if a police officer could be shot without consequence. Or a priest. What about teachers? Bus drivers? How big should the circle of exemptions get before her whole principle collapsed? And what of the economics? How much would it cost to implement and administer? A real-world number, not some low-ball government estimate. And if prisons are slow to empty, how should those funds be repurposed? She raised her questions with her fellow students, but they soon grew bored of her devout adherence to the one subject. The world was filled with too many injustices and evils for them to try and solve just the one problem. Her roommates and classmates wanted to pull apart the inadequacies of their parents' entire world, like so much taffy. So she carried on the conversation only with her dead father, until she finally had the freedom to devote herself to it in her postgraduate studies and complete the argument. Her doctoral paper, A Proposed New Role and Strategy of Government in Terms of Fighting the Epidemic of Violence Across Socioeconomic Strata, once published, caused barely a ripple in an academia habituated to far-left ideas. But no one, perhaps apart from her, was expecting anything more to come from it. She accepted an interim position in Zurich, where she was invited to be part of a new hybrid sociology-psychology department. She likely would have disappeared into the comfort of the academic void, if not for a colleague in the university's traditional sociology department who, feeling that he had been overlooked, not because of Mia's ability or the academic rigor of her idea, but for the simple fact that she was a foreigner, approached her one day on campus and raised a gun. Later, he claimed that the gun went off by mistake, and that he had only been attempting to make light of her dissertation. Legend has it that the last thing Mia said, looking the rival professor in the eye as he set to pull the trigger, was, "So you do agree with me after all?" A shooting on a university campus, and in Switzerland of all places, made national news and was noticed by a staffer for Kate Murphin, a long-shot Ohio State gubernatorial candidate who threw this Hail Mary at an early campaign rally. "I don't like some of the questions you're asking me tonight, but if I could shoot my most vocal critic, or let's say my opponent for office, who has long worn out his welcome, and who is so far out of touch with you, the citizens of this fine state we call home, and not suffer any consequence, what then? A bullet to the head, no police, no trial, problem solved, but with one caveat. It's the only bullet I will ever be allowed to fire." The outrage from the incumbent's office and the other candidates was instantaneous and spread like wildfire. Murphin secured her spot on the national news in one soundbite. Rather than backing down on the idea, she doubled down on it. She likely never read Mia's entire paper, but there was no need. She had stumbled upon an idea for others to rally around, and the crowds grew more fervent at every stop. Along the way, her communications director, who was fresh out of college and had accepted a job with Murphin's campaign as a glorified internship, honed the candidate's argument and gave Mia's idea a campaign-friendly handle: the Kill Registry. What if we finally have something that will give the gun lobby what they want, and the rest of us what we want? Imagine for a moment a state where people can no longer have 10 or 20 guns sitting in their closet, but just one. And not a rifle, a pistol. And what's more, with only one bullet. In response to critics calling her a lunatic, Murphin simply said, "Let the people decide. If I become governor, we'll hold a referendum." This notion of a state holding a popular referendum on an issue was introduced by South Dakota in 1898, but held little political currency until it caught fire in the wake of Murphin's campaign trail. Her opponents, including the incumbent, desperate to throw water on the flames, campaigned in unison against her. "Why Murphin?" was a catchy enough slogan, but not enough to stop her momentum. The idea went from ludicrous to hypothetical to imminent. If the extraordinary doesn't become ordinary, then where would you find progress? Once the people vote and once a law is set in stone, it fossilizes. No one circles back to Mia's original document to determine if her forecast of a 7% reduction in the mortality rate has been borne out. The math doesn't matter. The kill registry is as fundamental to society as is freedom of speech. At the age of 18, you're invited to a half-day seminar teaching you how to aim and fire to ensure success. Few people fail the test. Upon certification, you're given your gun. It's a special one-bullet chamber, and it is set to fire, no questions asked, except of oneself. The end.